first like to welcome everybody and thank everybody for joining us this evening as we put together just an incredible panel of experts to talk about sheltering in place when you're dealing with individuals on the autism spectrum. And my name's Howard Weiss. I'm the board president of Turning Point Autism Foundation. It's my pleasure to be here. And those of you who don't know about Turning Point's been around since about 2007. We operate a day school in Naperville, Illinois that serves some of the most severely impacted kids that are outplaced from school districts. We also have a career college that serves adult individuals on the spectrum, where we bring them in, teach them life skills, job skills, partner with local companies, corporations, and help those individuals find employment. And so we are just so blessed to be here tonight with a wonderful panel of experts to talk about the current situation that we find ourselves in, sheltering in place. I will say, as we jump into this, I'm going to introduce our panel, but as the questions flow, for those of you who are listening in or watching, feel free to use the chat button to send us any questions that you have, and we'll do our best to get to those questions either while we're in the midst of going through some of the issues or at the end. And any questions that don't get answered, we will attempt to address those questions as a follow-up. The recording of this webinar will be available on our website at some point this week, and we also intend to send out a packet of resources to go along with this to everybody who's participated. And for those of you who are just joining in, welcome. We're happy to have you. So first, what I want to do is I want to just introduce our panel of experts. I'll start with Katie Clancy. Katie works as a special needs planning attorney, and she evolved her early background in estate planning law as she began to represent families who had loved ones with special needs. After then becoming a mom with a child with special needs in 2009, she decided to devote her legal career to representing families in the special needs community. Katie does this by guiding parents and adults with disabilities through the decisions they face as their child grows and reaches certain milestones and years and life events. And she offers options to address each challenge along the way. So Katie, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Dr. Lisa Konick. Dr. Lisa Konick is a licensed clinical psychologist with expertise in the evaluation and treatment of a range of psychological and behavior problems, including depression and mood disorders, anxiety, attention, ADHD, and autistic spectrum disorders. Dr. Konick earned her doctoral degree from Northern Illinois University and completed her psychology internship at the Alexian Brothers Behavior Health Hospital. She's been involved in the assessment and treatment of children, adolescents, adults, and families across a variety of settings, including community mental health, residential intensive outpatient, and inpatient hospital environments. Lisa, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Dr. Stephen Walker. Dr. Walker is a board-certified behavior analyst, doctoral, and an associate professor of applied behavior analysis at Aurora University. He is a practice advisory board member and a board member at large at Turning Point Autism Foundation. Dr. Walker, thank you for being here. And Toni Van Laarhoven. Did I get that right, Toni? Van Laarhoven. Thank you. Toni teaches courses in the areas of developmental disabilities and autism, assistive technology, and applied behavior analysis at Northern Illinois University. She has worked in the field professionally for over 30 years and has conducted and published several research studies on the effectiveness of using video-based instruction for promoting independence among individuals with ASD and/or developmental disabilities. And I'm sure that those skills are coming into, you're finding those to be very helpful here during these times where we're using video, it seems like every day. And finally, Kim White. Kim White is the Executive Director of Career and Networking of the Career and Networking Center, a nonprofit organization located in Naperville that has been in the business of assisting clients and job career transition since 1996. Under her leadership since 2010, the center has expanded its resources and offerings and is now recognized as the go-to resource center for job seekers and career changers. Kim is actively involved in her community, serving on the Turning Point Autism Foundation Board, the Indian Prairie Educational Foundation Board, and is the chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the Naperville Chamber Area of Commerce. Kim has been recognized with community leadership and business awards, including the Naperville Area Chamber of Commerce Woman of the Month and the Glenn Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Women in Leadership Award. Kim, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And with that, I'd like to just kind of jump in and start with some things that are on all of our minds as we're navigating through these times. And for me, you know, I always like to look at things looking for, you know, silver linings or saving graces that we all have during these times. Obviously, we're dealing with a lot of adversity, but I like to think there's those silver linings and saving graces out there. For me, what I see is just the ability to use technology to communicate, utilizing video. I have sons that are impacted, and they're able to get on FaceTime and get on social media and visit with their friends and family and still stay connected while they're staying home. But I'll just kind of throw it out to the panel. Kim, I'll start with you. What saving graces or silver linings are you seeing during this period of time?
You know, thank you, Howard, and thank you all so much for giving me the opportunity and those of us on the panel to be part of this this evening. You know what, I'm seeing a lot of good things. So in our community, obviously, I'm seeing things that are happening where the community is sharing a lot of good around sharing joy in the community and some of the things that people are saying are putting out there. From, you know, on a personal level and on a work level, I just want to kind of talk about those two things. Personally, you know, we're doing well. My family's good. My 82-year-old dad lives with us. We're able to get out and go for walks. So that's been good. My 2 adult children are home, which is good. So we're able to spend some good family time. So I'm seeing that as a lot of good that's going on. From a work standpoint, I have an amazing team. And once we received that stay-at-home order, it took us 3 days, sleepless nights, but 3 days to turn everything over so that we could create virtual options for our clients so that they could be focused on their job search. So one of the things that I've been able to see is working with my team remotely, to your point, Howard, about technology, and seeing them in their space and, you know, working from their kitchen or from their basement and, you know, having intrusions from their families and their pets, but seeing them in their space and all of us being able to, you know, understand we've got this huge commitment to our clients and that we really need to be focused on our clients, but also recognizing that they also are under a great deal of stress. And so we're able to talk through that as a team. And I think it's made us all appreciate one another even more so. And then as a leader, it's made me, you know, to really appreciate what they're doing. So.
Thanks, Kim. And Katie, how about you? Silver linings and you know, saving graces. What are you seeing out there?
I would agree again with technology. In my practice, we have one of the final products that we'll be writing are documents that people need, whether it's powers of attorney for people who need help making decisions or wills or trusts. And typically we have to sign these documents in person with several witnesses. And that became a challenge really early on because we could not meet people in person, or people weren't comfortable even though we're considered an essential business. So what's interesting for me is Governor Pritzker signed an order a couple of weeks ago allowing us to actually virtually sign documents. So, for example, I could watch each of you sign a document and you hold the document up to the camera, and it counts as something that we could actually witness. So a lot of people are able to have emergency things put into place because of this exception. It'll only be in place while the stay-at-home order is occurring. But that's a big development for us business-wise. So I'm grateful for that.
Thank you. Yeah, technology, it just seems to be, I don't know what we'd be doing now without it. So
oh God.
Right. So, you know, one of the issues certainly that we promote, or one of the things we promote at Turning Point, is really creating, you know, a primary outcome of independence for our students. And certainly a lot of that happens because they're coming to our program, they're there every day, and they're getting reinforced habits, and you're beginning to see, and we see the development of independence through even the most severely impacted kids. But when they're at home, as a parent, I know how this goes. We tend to shelter them a little bit, do things for them. As a parent who's has an individual who's impacted at home, what are some of the things they can be doing to continue to build independence for their child? Stephen, I'll go to you on that one. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's a good point to kind of bring up in terms of what is it we can do to kind of continue to maintain the gains that a lot of these kids have made over their time. But I think it's also important to take a step back and realize that life isn't normal right now, and kind of what every parent is kind of dealing with at home is very different than the clinical or school context that these kids are typically working on these skills with. So to think that, or to expect that anyone would assume that the parents are responsible for running programming at a level that is on par with what's happening in school or your child's clinic on a day-to-day basis is unrealistic. And so I think that there's ways that we can kind of be smart about the way that we kind of tackle kind of promoting independence kind of throughout the day. But I think one of those is kind of focusing in on what's going on in the parents' lives during all of this. And again, kind of being smart. There's actually some really cool research coming out of the University of Florida right now, where they're conducting research looking at kind of things that influence parents and caregivers' behavior as it relates to kind of self-care tasks and kind of helping their children do that. And it's a simple finding, but I think it has some merit to the conversation that we're talking about today. So let's say that like a typical daily living task, let's say getting dressed in the morning. Let's assume that that task has 25 steps. And so if you can go in and provide full assistance and get your child ready, and you're helping every step of the way, you can probably accomplish each of those steps in 5-ish seconds, right? So you can probably get your child dressed from opening the closet to putting the last sock on in probably a little over 2 minutes. But often the teaching procedures or the training procedures that we're using to teach these kinds of daily living tasks involve kind of complicated and lengthy timing procedures where you can have that same task, and if you were to follow these procedures with some bit of regularity, you may take 30 seconds per task. And while that may not sound a lot on the front end, the difference between 30 seconds or 5 seconds, if you look at that across the entirety of the task, you're going from getting dressed is going to take you 2 minutes to now something that's going to take you 12, 13 minutes. And if we look at what's happening in our day-to-day lives right now, we really have to ask ourselves, do we have that amount of time to be able to do that while we're also working with our other children, while we're also doing X, Y, Z? So I think in terms of being smart about it, the way to kind of do it would be to identify maybe 1 or 2 of those kind of daily living tasks that you would want to focus on, and then maybe focus on a specific step of that skill at any moment in time. So this is something that we're working with right now. I have a 1- and 4-year-old at home that my wife and I are juggling in terms of trying to meet all of our work obligations and parent. And so right now in our daughter's routine, I'm doing everything, getting her dressed in the morning, except for the socks. So socks are where we're kind of focusing and trying to promote independence is at that point. And again, this is, we're incredibly privileged in the situation that we have, but I can't imagine being and running through an entire kind of lengthy procedure in order to promote that. And so I think if anything, if the parents can know that it's okay to help their children through these things, but be smart about the way that you're going to kind of focus and target independence, and make sure that you're kind of staying within what is possible for you. The second and very quick and short note that I'd want to point out is all of this is going to be independent on a given child. And the second thing is to reach out to your child's clinical or school team to try to get an idea of where these kids are relative to these skills. And as much as possible, try to involve them in that process, whether they can come in and provide additional trainings through telehealth models to you or to siblings in the house could potentially be useful.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. And interestingly enough, you think about, I've heard from families who are home, both mom and dad are working, and their kids are home from school, on the autism spectrum or not. And what I'm hearing is, oh my gosh, I'm juggling my kids and their curriculum and what they're doing. And you can just imagine, how complex that gets when you're dealing with somebody whose special needs are on the spectrum. Lisa, being always on for our children as we're in this place, what can we do as parents to just take care of ourselves as we're taking care of our kids at home?
Thank you. Yes. I think that's a really important topic, as we all, I think many of us on the panel are parents, and we're all doing what we call crisis schooling right now. We're not looking at, a lot of parents are anxious about how much the kids are losing in terms of their academics right now. And I just want to make a statement, just please stay calm, and they're going to recover. We're really doing the best we can. I know a lot of the academics has been skinnied down a bit. And a lot of our kids right now, a lot of the kids that we're working with, and we're still doing therapy with a lot of our families through telehealth services, are starting to unravel. They're getting tired of being out of school and away from their routine. So the advice that I've been giving, and we've been giving a lot of the families, is to try to maintain some type of structure and routine at home. I think for your own sanity as a parent, and to keep your kids as best regulated, is kids like some structure, they like routine. So we're trying to encourage people to do visual routines as much as possible, kind of outline the steps of the day, maybe mimic your school schedule a bit, depending on, there's a wide range of how much kids are getting in school right now. Some kids are doing very basics and just focusing on literacy, whereas adolescents are still getting a full caseload in some cases, depending on where they are with their schooling and what type of programming they're in. So I think really structure, keeping that routine in place, and it's going to help parents as well. So kids are going to be less dysregulated when they know what to expect. So we're trying to recommend, stick with those same behavioral principles that you've been using. Advance notice of expectations, what's coming next, when are we going to focus on learning, when are we going to focus on non-learning activities, when do kids get screen time. Some of the things we're trying to promote for families just in general to manage stress, and is to have some physical activity every day. So trying to get out of the house, do something physically active, at home or outside if you can, still maintaining the social distance.
Class, right? Yeah.
With that?
We can all go to gym class.
Not gym class, but having gym class, being creative with gym class. Even a lot of the kids that we're working with are dysregulated very quickly, and they need a lot of motor breaks. So we're trying to encourage families in general to get some physical activity. I'm recommending to parents not to get so overwhelmed. Kids can't necessarily maintain 30 or 45 minutes of learning. We're looking at what can they tolerate. And also, trying to get some family time in and having some breaks in the day. So you're focusing on physical activity, you're focusing on creative time, you're focusing on learning and or work, and you're focusing on really that sleep and nutrition balance, because that does help boost our immune system and make us feel better and keep us healthier and stronger. So really recommending those kind of balanced routine tasks in the day. The other thing that is helpful for parents, because parents need a break and their kids are kind of bouncing off the walls, and I'm watching them on telehealth, truly bouncing off the walls, spinning in chairs. And we're really talking about, what do you do if you can get your kids on a regular wake up schedule and website for self-care. And they include things that are mindfulness, deep breathing, deep muscle relaxation, things of that nature that can help people to regulate their anxiety. So
awesome.
I hope
Well,
that.
what I heard was meditation and structure. That sounds good to me.
Yes,
right?
and routine. Yes, yes.
Routine. Very cool. Thank you, Lisa. And we talked about technology and having the kids at home, going to school remotely, and as we're moving to these online curriculums, how realistic? And I'll go to Toni. Toni, how realistic is it for students with an IEP to be on an online curriculum? And what items could you suggest to families who are have kids who are on IEPs who are now thrust into this online curriculum?
That's a really difficult question to answer. I think it completely depends on the individual student and what their goals are on their IEPs and how we're going to address them, because some of their goals aren't easily addressed through an online format. So, and you also have to think about those related service minutes, or the different supports that they're supposed to be receiving from related service personnel, and how are we going to get those things addressed in their IEPs as well. So I think for some students, when it comes to like academic goals, maybe it's math, maybe it's reading or something like that, there are some online curricula available to where they can try to address some of those needs, but not every student can sit at the computer for hours and go through some of those things, and they need a lot of support. And what I love that Stephen and Lisa and Katie, what everyone is saying is, it's very difficult when parents are, they're juggling their own work, they're juggling other children and trying to juggle it all. You can only do the best you can. And I think it's dependent on how creative we can be as professionals to deliver some of these services through online formats. Personally, I feel like, the best thing that we can do is that we can look at some of those functional daily living skills that our students need to be independent, and embed some of those academic skills in them. So for example, one thing that we can work on is, if we want to work on reading, let's look at, okay, how about we just focus on what is our grocery list going to look like this week? What are some of the meals that we want to make, and kind of do a meal planning activity. What are some of you pick Monday dinner, your sister will pick Tuesday dinner. Let's create our shopping list together. Okay, how much is that going to cost? So you can bring in some math there, you can do some budgeting, and just embed some of those skills into just some of those daily living things that are going to be applicable to your family's functioning. And working on those things, it's very realistic, and it's going to be helpful for the family. I do think that, with the way all of this played out, it's very difficult for us to just, shift gears and suddenly shift to online curriculum and have it working perfectly. We need a little bit more time to process. I do think that, with a little bit more careful planning and looking at, okay, what are the goals that this individual needs to work on? And we can look at some of their individual goals and say, okay, how can we address these in the best way? So for example, if, their goals are more related to social skills, communication, independent living skills, some of those things are going to require much more experiential learning, where they're going to have to do it. And then that's when, some of those video conferencing tools are going to come into play. And I think, like you said, Howard, one of the things that we can do, and something that I wish we would all do, is come together and develop some video-based instructional things for, what is your favorite meal? Okay, let's work on you making that meal. We can build in measurement, we can build in buying the groceries, we can build in reading the recipes, and putting those things all together so that they're working on several skills at once. But it doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, I need to spend 2 hours working on, reading or things like that. I think we just need to be more creative and, working on a lot of those skills within the context of what we're doing at home. And, but to be honest, when I think about some of these things too, I think it's very important for us to look at, okay, what is reality right now? And, you think of, okay, we have these IEP objectives that we're supposed to address, but at the same time, we're also looking at, okay, what are the skills that our students need and our children need to be successful given our current circumstances. So I'm really thinking that, some of the things that we should really be looking at are making sure that they know how to be safe, knowing that they need to wash their hands all of the time. Another thing that I think that we really have to kind of start building on is looking at, in order to access the community in the very near future, you might be having to wear a face mask. And for a lot of our guys, that's going to be really, really challenging. So some of the things that I think that we need to start incorporating into our daily routines is, okay, can you wear a face mask for 30 seconds? Can you find a face mask that is going to be comfortable for you? Working on putting on gloves, helping the family to wash down their groceries. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Yeah,
but
No, Toni, I
Absolutely.
think that those are all great recommendations. I think the only thing I would add to it is don't let that stuff happen in a vacuum. I think if those are becoming priorities for you in the home, communicate that with your child's clinical team. If your child was receiving clinical services prior to this or school-based services prior to all this happening, reach out to them and try to get ideas about, they know the students better than we do as it relates to teaching them these specific skills. So if those are things that they can develop programming around and work with you, the parents, and train you to be able to do that effectively, I think would be a nice way to continue services in this way.
I think that's a really great. I really appreciate those comments, both Toni and Stephen. Giving kind of letting parents know and giving them permission to say, look, we've got a set of circumstances, a reality going on right now. The most important thing for a lot of our kids is learning the life skills that they're going to need to be able to cope with what's happening and then what's going to happen in the future. And having a license to maybe go a little bit off script. These are my IEP goals, and this is what we're trying to accomplish. But there are things that we can do to accomplish those goals in this now moment. And I think it's great for parents to be able to hear that they have permission to do that, and we can go off script and get creative. And sounds too, we can have some fun with it. And that's really, that's really the added bonus with all of that. So thank you so much for your comments there. And kind of speaking a little bit about the reality of that we all face today. A lot of our families are working at home with kids at home, but we're also seeing families that are experiencing unemployment who also have, who are also impacted with individuals, on the autism spectrum. Kim, what measures can individuals take who are newly unemployed and dealing with, special needs kids at home or kids in general? What's that?
Yeah, so, this is a very overwhelming, scary time for a lot of people. With millions of people being out of work, folks are, rightfully so scared and nervous about what's going on. And what I tell people as we do, webinars and workshops daily is it's really important to not stop, right? This is the time to really be proactive in a job search. So that means, reaching out participating in workshops and webinars, accountability groups, setting up networking meetings, virtual networking meetings. Take time, because we have so much time on our hand, this is the time to really make sure your online presence stands out. So you have HR recruiters who have a lot of time on their hands right now. So they are able to, they're looking around LinkedIn to see who might be a good fit for their company once things open up. So there are going to be some industries that are going to struggle initially, but industries will bounce back, and they're going to need folks to come in and start working. So you want to make sure your resume is up to date. It focuses on skills and data points that are going to speak to job seekers and workers and businesses. You also want to make sure you're really able to master those virtual coffees and videos and interview videos. I'm sorry. So right now, I think Howard, you mentioned earlier about technology. We are all experiencing, I know personally, Zoom fatigue, right? But this is the time to really try to perfect your video skills, your Zoom skills, and be ready for when things do open up, you're ready for that interview. So, what does your background look like? What is your lighting like? What are some things that you can do to make sure that you stand out when it is time to impress those hiring managers when they're hiring? I will tell you, while we're experiencing this downtime and a lot of people are struggling with, where's my next paycheck going to come from? I will tell you that we are personally hearing, I'm personally hearing from our own clients that they're landing. So just this week, 2 of our clients have landed really great jobs that they had no clue they would hear back from. They interviewed before the shelter in place went into effect, and they both got offers this week. So companies are still out there and hiring. I would just tell people to be, just be patient, but really spend some time getting that online presence together and make sure you're ready to go for when things do open up, and you're ready to go for that. So.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, and I can just say from my perspective, I deal with a lot of in a business-to-business setting. While there's industries that are severely impacted and that they aren't working, on the flip side, there are industries that are doing very, very well and they are hiring. So there is hope out there. It may mean that you need to do a shift in a dramatic shift from what you were doing before to now, but there are industries out there that are looking for good people. So there is hope for those who have found themselves unemployed during this time. Thanks, Kim.
Yeah, and just to add to that, again, just take a look at your skills. Really focus on those skills, because there will be a lot of folks shifting in terms of what they were doing, now before and now. So really focus on those skills.
Thank you.
Can I just add something there, Kim?
Sure.
I love working with students who are getting jobs and trying to provide on-the-job training. And one of the things that I was thinking of is just kind of looking at the needs of people from all over, and something that I was kind of alluding to earlier is the idea of that what our new normal might look like is that we have to go to work wearing face masks. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be very challenging for a lot of our students to even be able to tolerate. And, I thought, boy, wow, why aren't we looking at micro businesses? Why aren't we looking at building some, having students, even for an art activity that's provided, I'm thinking in terms of a teacher who's doing virtual learning with students, coming up with an art activity, finding some of those, you can look online, here's how you can make a face mask, but even having students pick their own fabric, having them, come up with some type of a thing that they can wear, but then that's going to be also something that other people will want, so I'm thinking you could even make a micro business where they're selling some of these things. So I think there's also different opportunities that we can look at for employment opportunities for some of our students. And if I hope I'm making sense, but it almost seems like if they can come up with something that works well for them, it's probably going to work well for others.
Mhm.
So those are just some ideas. I think that we can come up with creative employment opportunities for a lot of our students and adults at the same time.
I love the call for creativity during these times. And Carrie, maybe Carrie's our executive director, she's on, but maybe we need to set up a Turning Point Shark Tank or something so we can get these ideas promoted and out there.
Go.
I love new ideas. Thank you for all your comments. Katie, I want to come back to you a little bit. We talked about time and we talked about how families are spending their time. As we shelter in place, we do create pockets of time for families. And I'm interested to know from your perspective, what activities may be overlooked for special needs families and that we might be able to encourage folks to take on right now in small steps.
Sure, well, that's a great question, because I think I find that some families are looking at this time as, hey, I have an extra few hours on the weekend or during the day where the kids are occupied with other tasks, and they want to chip away at this long to-do list, things around the house. Sometimes it happens to be planning, or they have experienced a family member who's been ill, or maybe this is just something they've been wanting to tackle for a long time. Given that I think people are very overwhelmed with a lot of things right now, what I would look at two things. The first is a timeline. I prepared a timeline for people based on the age of their children or their young adult that really focuses in on, what do I need to do right now? If I've not done anything else, what is my priority for now? Because planning is a process. It can take months or even years to hammer out a good plan. So in the materials that everyone will be receiving, I've included a timeline that breaks down what a parent can do right now in terms of planning, or what they really need to know, because there are other deadlines, such as for public government benefits or other important timeframes. Those are the things they can focus in on right now to preserve their time. And then the other thing is really trying to accumulate and organize your records for your child. And what I mean is, when our firm applies or helps a family apply for Social Security, or SSI, Supplemental Security Income, or some of the other benefits, we need to have data and records to show the child's disability, how their skill sets are impacted, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of times these reports, people can't find them, or they're not at the same school anymore, or it's been 15 years and there hasn't been a neuropsych report. So what I encourage people to do is get a banker's box with a lid, and put those, go through your files, find the reports, try to it's like tax season, when you throw all your receipts and things in one particular folder. Do it now, because if you're cleaning your closet, or you're doing these little projects around your house that you now have the time to do, this is something that is going to help you later. And it doesn't have to be a micro files and spend a lot of time. Just get these things in one place, because it can save you a lot of time later. And you might also just scan some of these documents in, so you have them electronically. So those are kind of surface things that I would say that don't require a lot of stamina or thinking too hard about some of these issues that are difficult already. But I have the timeline is in the materials if you'd like to share those, and
we'll share all that. Thank
prioritize. You. Sure.
And I'm guessing on the timeline, we're not going to find, binge watching Netflix or anything like that. Is that a good use or no?
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe one little weekend a spurt. But thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely.
And Stephen, I'm going to come back to you. Just talking about communication strategies, and certainly we spent a lot of time on the communication piece at Turning Point. And we've seen families use very low-tech, schedules and communication means. Any recommendations for families about communicating with their friends or on the spectrum during the shelter-in-place time?
Yeah, so I think if you're looking at, I think to kind of answer that in two parts. One would be looking at what you can do to kind of continue the use of your kid's communication system. So if you have a child that has a working communication system, I think it's looking at and figuring out what you can do as a family to continue to maintain that use. It's oftentimes one of the situations where using those communication systems may not be the most efficient at that moment in time. And so unfortunately, sometimes the contingencies are not in the favor of the parent, where it'd be faster to do something for your child without making them follow through on the communication or something along those lines. And I think at that point, it's kind of taking a step back and figuring out, like, what are the battles that you have the ability to kind of fight at this moment. So, if you have those communication systems and you have the ability to continue to use those systems with fidelity, do so, by all means. If you find yourself in a situation where you're having difficulty following through with those communication systems with a level of fidelity, again, reach out to your child's team and kind of let them know some of the struggles that you're encountering on a day-to-day basis, and use them as a resource to try to figure out how to address the concerns that you're running into on a day-to-day basis, while also maybe minimizing the negative impact that it may have on the outside. But the second kind of thing to talk about with that question, I think Toni can jump in on this as well, but I think it's trying to figure out how we can go about effectively using Zoom and all, FaceTime, whatever it may be, to kind of facilitate some of the social skills that some of our kids have been working on, and what we can do to continue to kind of maintain some of those skills. And again, it's going to be child dependent. I think some children just jump on it and they love it, and they're, next thing you know, you come in the room and they're talking about all kinds of random things. I think it's also looking at, well, what are the conditions under which your child will start to engage in those kind of conversations? Just as a small example, if I'm in the room with my daughter and she's on the iPad with one of her friends, it's quiet. There's nothing happening. There's no communication happening whatsoever. It's just incredibly awkward and weird. As soon as I step out of the room and give them space and allow them an opportunity to communicate on their own, it's loud. She's running around the room, tearing stuff. They're showing each other stuff. So just because it's not working in one situation doesn't mean it's not going to work at all. And I think by, again, contacting and working with your child's team to try to get an idea of where have they been successful in promoting this kind of communication or interaction, and seeing what you can do to kind of duplicate some of that at home.
And I will add on to that. I'm sorry, Stephen.
No,
go ahead, Toni. Thank you.
Oh, no, I was just going to, kind of add on to that. I think you're absolutely right. I think, continue to try to get your sons and daughters and students to continue using their communication systems. And although I know, a lot of us are using some of those low-tech strategies, sometimes those are the easiest things to do. They work well, having those visual supports in your home, and even if it's moving a Post-it note from one place to the other. I know there are, some, apps that will also allow for, individuals to communicate with each other. I strongly encourage, trying to teach students how to FaceTime with people. If they have an iPhone, or learning how to use WhatsApp, or, a way to be able to communicate with friends in some other way. If you have students, or children who are at the middle school or high school level, there's nothing wrong with focusing on teaching them how to text each other. There's actually an app called Tippy Talk. So for students or individuals who are non-readers, it's visually based. And so you can set it up to where the individual can say, you can have a set of communication partners where it's like, Mom, I want chicken nuggets for dinner tonight, and that's going to come in through a text, but it gives them more of that age appropriate way of communicating with their friends while still communicating. So there are different strategies, but I also think that working on communication and social skills using some of those video conferencing tools is great. I am a co-guardian of my older sister, and we literally just got off a Zoom meeting with her right before I joined this session. And, it's wonderful getting her to communicate and to be able to use some of those social skills and asking her questions and trying to get them used to, you can still communicate with others using your communication system, but in a virtual strategy. So I think, encouraging that too, using their communication systems that they have right now can also help to work on their social skills as well as their communication skills. So I think we just have to be creative as well as we can be. Oh, somebody just asked, what is the name of the texting app? It's called Tippy Talk, TIPPY TALK. I've actually been working with some of the people that develop that, and they're really interested in doing research. So if any of you want to try it at home, we can try to get you a free version and do something. So Stephen, there you go, research ideas.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
We love free. Free is good.
Well, right now they have like a one-way communication system through text where the individual has like visuals where they can just hit like certain things and it will text the people that are in their network, but they're working on a two-way communication. And we were looking at that for our sister to where we could, give her an iPad, and send her a text message and say, hey, we're coming. What do you want for dinner? And giving her a choice. Do you want McDonald's? Do you want Wendy's? Do you want blah, blah, blah? And having her have a way to be able to respond. I don't know if it's quite there yet in terms of that two-way communication, but I think they're pretty close. So there are things that are out there that are, ready to be, kind of worked on and they, working well for families. I think it's wonderful if a child can just say, Mom, this is what I really want, and just directly to mom. And another thing that we've thought about, my twin sister and I, she's a vocational coordinator and we do a lot of work together. But one of the things we were looking at for that is even for individuals who are on the job, who may have a job coach, you don't want that job coach always hovering over them. And so this would be a perfect opportunity for them to say, hey, I'm not sure what to do right now. I need help, where they can discreetly contact either a manager or a job coach without having somebody right there. So just, again, coming up with some of those creative ways to communicate.
Sounds like something we could use in our career college. Thanks, Toni, for all of that advice. Thank you, Dr. Walker. Lisa, I want to turn to you. Where can families go for support?
I think that this forum has been a very useful way of connecting people with sources of support. We've collected some really wonderful, I think, resources from the different panelists involved, and that'll be shared with everyone at the end. So I think that Turning Point for pulling this together. The other thing that we were trying to do is really pool our own resources and resources within the community and to have a listing of available options on our website for families. So we're trying to list those agencies that are putting out information, such as Autism Speaks, the Autism Society. We've connected with some good articles. The Autism Support Network is putting out some good articles and sources of information, and we're trying to provide that collectively. The other thing that I think parents are possibly experiencing, and as our own caseload, we're seeing a lot of kids, like I said, unraveling right now, and we're offering telehealth services. And a lot of people don't realize and this may differ. I know that the Illinois standards are that telehealth is offered right now as a service and should not be charged for insurance. So if you have insurance, it's being covered in full, and a lot of people may not know that, or it should be covered in full. So if you need support and if you're finding that you are struggling to manage doing some behavioral management and you're noticing that your child is acting out And what we're talking to parents is a lot of behavioral patterns are emerging with all of these changes, and kids don't like unexpected. They don't like deviations to routine. A lot of our clients have kids that are even more disrupted with that. We are offering telehealth services to provide supports to those families in need. And others may have other recommendations. I know, Toni, you shared a wonderful resource that I said I was going to snack off of you and put on my website as well. Would you like to reference that?
Are you referring to the supporting individuals with autism through uncertain times?
There was that, and then there was another one called Autism Focused Intervention Resources that I thought had some really wonderful intervention recommendations that they could use through modules.
Yes, absolutely. So both of those things are connected.
Visual. Yeah.
Yeah, I highly recommend, and I think Carrie and Howard, you are sharing all of these resources, right?
Everybody will get the resources delivered to them by the end of the week.
Yeah, the one that I really like that I think is going to be very beneficial for families is the Supporting Individuals with Autism Through Uncertain Times. It's a whole toolkit. It's about 60 pages long, but it has examples of things to do for time management, for being able to take self-care, self-management, exercise, well-being, all kinds of resources that are just so practical. And
I took a look at that, and it seemed very comprehensive. So rather than having people jump around, it really did seem like a very solid
I agree.
for things to make use of, particularly during this time when we are feeling a bit overwhelmed. The other thing I think is important to mention is there's a lot going on right now, and I think just focusing on your emotional well-being is really our priority, and I think it's good to keep that in mind. So really trying to be mindful of yourself, and how you're managing as a parent is going to reflect on how your child is managing. So as much as we can stay well balanced, we're going to kind of model that behavior for our family members.
Awesome. Thank you both. Appreciate that. Did I hear somebody? No. So believe it or not, we're getting towards the end. So what I would love to do is just kind of go through to each of our panelists and ask really two questions. If you can keep it to about a minute or so, minute and a half, that would be great. Number one, you guys are interacting with lots of families, and I'm sure you're seeing lots of great ideas. So if you've come across some great ideas from different families that they're implementing on how to manage things right now, love to hear about those. And also just anything else that you'd love to share tonight. Kim, you're on top of my screen, so I'll start with you, Kim.
All right.
Ideas and anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I'll keep it quick. There's a couple of things I've been sharing with families is you can, again, Zoom, right, and all this technology, but virtual outings. So you can go online, and different museums have ways that you can virtually go through the museum now. So those are some things that I think families can do together, and they've shared with me. And also just getting outdoors as the weather gets nicer, obviously practicing social distancing, but getting outdoors and taking those walks, nature walks, whatever that might look like. And then at the end of the day, I mean, I think just, be encouraged, could continue to be engaged with other folks, and also just be safe, wash hands. I think some of those things have already been mentioned. And the importance of self-care, taking care of yourself so that you can also take care of those that are around you.
Thanks, Kim. Lisa.
I agree with those. The thing that I have been really trying to help people remember is this is temporary. We may have some changes as a result of this long term, but this is a temporary time period. This will pass. So we really kind of focusing on that. And also focusing on what's in your control. So managing the things that we're able to manage. And we talked about a lot of those resources today. So I've been really trying to encourage people to keep those mentally in hand.
Thank you. Katie.
As a family, one thing that we've enjoyed, and this builds on what some of the others have said about teaching life skills within some other activity, so it's an indirect. We have started making a point of visiting forest preserves and finding where they are on a map, because they're, a lot of things aren't open right now. The Arboretum and other usual places we would go. So we have been looking at maps, figuring out distance, what the rules of that particular place might be, like if dogs are allowed or not. And then when we get there, kind of making a record of whether it's good terrain for riding a scooter, or is it a friendly place? What other types of, and then we try to write it up, and we've been sharing that with friends on Facebook. So what's nice about it is we are learning places in Illinois that we didn't know existed, getting outside, looking at a map, trying to teach some of the, basic things, and then having a picnic and family time. So I think if you can start a tradition like that, that's been nice to take everybody's mind off what's happening.
Toni.
Well, first, I just want to say I'm just so thankful that I am a part of this. I think Turning Point, you're doing wonderful things. And I love everything that all of the panelists have been sharing at this point. I do think that one of the things, and I think Lisa, you said this perfectly, I think you have to, for families, you have to go easy on yourselves and realize that you can't do it all. I mean, do the best you can, and, try to have fun and just love each other through all of this. And you can work on, a lot of those skills just in being together as a family, and checking in with each other. One of the things that I've seen a lot of people using is just checking in with individuals and say, well, how are you feeling? And, letting them to respond to you, using emojis, or, having them develop their own Bitmoji that looks like them to where they can say, this is how I'm feeling, or just in some way to communicate, how they're feeling, and just being okay with a little bit of this uncertainty, but trying to give as much structure as you can to try to make it less uncomfortable.
Great points. Thanks, Toni. Stephen, I'll go to you.
Yeah, so I think, again, backing up on something that Lisa said earlier, is just knowing and trying to become familiar with what resources, the parents have available to them right now. And, working with folks if they need help accessing those resources to get them. I think most importantly, that is what people need. Second to that, I think just kind of reiterating this idea that no matter how hard we try right now, we're not going to be perfect, and I think it's going to be a situation where we have to do the best that we can within a situation. And so, like if you're in the middle of the day and you need to have a work call and you have nothing else to do, and it's like, you could have the work call and have your child, having problem behavior, engaging in problem behavior behind you, or you could give them the iPad and they can watch the iPad while you're on your work call. There's no harm in that at this point in time. Like, that is perfectly fine. And the funny thing is that there is a strong research impetus for that as well. Another just kind of take-home thing would be, when problem behavior occurs, just try to minimize any of your response to that. Try to keep everybody safe. Try to make sure that nobody else is going to get hurt, but then maximize any of those opportunities where the child is engaging in any kind of appropriate behavior. So if your kid is doing something awesome, even if it's just walking up and saying hi to their sister in a really polite and awesome way, jump on them and shower them with all the attention you can possibly do when those things are happening. And again, this is just a general recommendation. Is it going to work for your child? Maybe or maybe not. But the general idea of kind of minimizing our reactions when things are going wrong is a good idea. And then maximizing our reactions when things are going right.
Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and, if the panel doesn't mind, there's a couple questions that we've got from the audience. We're a little bit past our time, but I'd love to stay just for a few more minutes, if that's okay, just so that we can maybe address a couple of questions that have come across from the audience. And this one is directed to Lisa and or Toni. Do you recommend teletherapy through schools, and particularly for speech or social work, et cetera?
I can't say if I recommend it for speech and social work, but I have consulted with some of my colleagues who are doing speech services, and they are effectively offering some of those strategies through telehealth, so it can be done. I know one of the things that we're limited on are some of the standardized testing, so doing evaluations right now could be somewhat limited due to the lack of being in that face-to-face interaction. We're missing too much.
Mm-hmm.
Toni, do you have thoughts about that?
Some of the resources that we shared, there are a couple of webinars I think that are coming up. It's offered through the Assistive Technology Industry Association, ATIA. And so if you click on that link, there's a ton of wonderful resources and webinars for experts in the field for how to, offer supports for communication skills, how to provide communication supports at home. And I believe there's a webinar coming up, maybe even next week, that talks about, how to provide virtual speech supports. I think it's next week. And if not, there will be a recording that you can watch. I don't know anything about it. I haven't watched the webinar, but I think there are some different supports that are out there that you can kind of look into.
Thank you. Any other comments on that piece? Great. And I have just a couple more here real quick. And this really gets maybe into the heart of the matter of some of the things that our families are dealing with, particularly with kids that are on the spectrum, and dealing with disappointment and getting out of routine and things that were anticipated. I just know from my own personal experience, when something was on the calendar, if it got on the calendar, with my son, it's on the calendar. It's a go. We must do it. And so we're seeing a lot of families that are having to pull things off the calendar and dealing with disappointments and ultimately maybe dealing with future disappointments because there's so much uncertainty out there. And then couple that with dealing with maybe individuals that aren't able to communicate and address some of those issues, the way that maybe some of us that are more typical are doing. So what are some recommendations you can make to families that are dealing with the uncertainty and getting out of the routine and the disappointment to help make those individuals feel secure and safe at home?
One of the things that I had been thinking of as I saw some of the questions come through is social stories. Mm-hmm. So creating some social stories about the changes that are taking place. There are some that are already out there that I've seen about the pandemic already published that look pretty good. We have them on our website. I can't think of which ones they are right now. I know Temple Grandin just did some discussion about this too and posted an article. I think that can be a helpful way to communicate visually and through a story about how to understand some of the things that are happening and even just changes to your regular routines. What's the new routine look like in place of the old routine, or what can we learn to expect? Could be beneficial.
Yeah. And I think just to piggyback on what Lisa said, I think it's, unfortunately, I think we're in a time where we have to kind of create what that new routine is. And I think looking and making sure that the things that you're including in that list are 100% these things can happen. And so I think that, looking at the little bit of control that we do have, slotting things into that schedule that we can feel confident in that, hey, these things will occur. Yes, we can make these things happen. If there is any kind of doubt about whether or not those things can be included or that you'll be able to do them, maybe be a little more hesitant in kind of including them in the schedule for that day or week or whatever it may be.
Katie, I don't know, you were shaking your head. Was there something you wanted to add to that?
What's been working for me for now, and our son is 11, having a substitute or starting to brainstorm about what a substitute might look like. If you can't do this because of can't see school, your friends at school, or for him, there's a camp in the summer that he lives for, and we don't know right now if that's going to happen or not. But I started front loading him already and saying, well, you know how all these things are occurring, or we're not able to do this or that. that could happen with the camp. And so we've started talking about making up our own camp. It was all I could think of at the time. I'm going to be probably sorry that I made that up, but
creativity. You got to be creative.
but just having a replacement, kind of like, paying attention, as Stephen was saying, really focusing on good behavior and kind of downplaying bad. So I really focus on what other options there might be, and this is an opportunity to practice being flexible. And I mean, it's not going to work for everyone, but certainly for us, having the substitutes and working on those makes it a little bit less difficult. But
Wonderful. Well, I think that gets us to the end. I don't see any other questions that are out there. Thank you so much to our panel for being here tonight and just kind of being forthcoming with all this wonderful information. For those of you who have joined us out there, thank you for being here tonight. We will make a recording of this webinar available on our website, and the packet of information will be delivered to our website through social media. There's some emails that went out that you can email us at Turning Point and we can get that to you. But just again, thank you so much for all of your time, and thank you everybody for being here. This was just a wonderful session filled with information, and hopefully we don't have to do this again, but if we do, we certainly will call on this esteemed panel to help us out. Thank you so much. And with that, I will just thank everybody and wish everybody just all the safety and really hope everybody can be present during this time to find some silver linings out there for you and your families as we walk through this together. And just remember, while you may be at home alone with your family, you're not really alone. We are here, and we want to help everybody that we can at Turning Point. So thank you for being here. Thank you.
thank you very much, Howard.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for setting it
Nice
up.
to see everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel like we just hit cut, like it's over now.